Okay, I came to this convention not knowing what to expect, but you were putting books out and various publications upstairs, and I picked up a book with fantastic quotations. I've never heard of your group and of your system of beliefs put as Tzu Chi. This is the first time, but I can feel there is a genuine heart in it, there is compassion, and from what I have heard, I feel this is what the world needs. There were times when I was an activist and more politically involved. I have gone through my own transformation, and now I am able to understand this type of loving compassion and loving humanity at its best. A humanity that is sharing and giving. So I'm delighted to be here.
But is that mostly touching your heart?
What brought tears to my eyes when I was sat there was the interface between your people and ordinary people in Manchester, sharing gifts, sharing compassion and reaching out in a respectful way, human being with another human being, 2 cultures, 3 cultures, we can all be together in harmony. It is such an affirmation, it's amazing.
My name is Rosie. I found this talk very interesting. It's the first time I've heard of a Buddhist group going out into a community and doing what we usually associate with perhaps the Christian community. I like the way that you all work alongside. I've always been inspired by the Dalai Lama, who always said you don't need to change your religion, you just work for others. So I was very interested in it, but I asked my question because I feel you need to meet together and meditate and learn from the Dharma as well as the practical side of it. But I think good works, people can learn from people's example, rather than just shut yourself away, oh, I'm a very holy person, I'm praying, which is all very good, but it's good to be practical too, especially in, all the troubles of the world, all over the world, some on our doorstep, some far away. So thank you very much.
My name is Paul. I've been a Buddhist for 30 years. Initially with what was the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. I was with them for a long time. And very shortly afterwards, I began to think about, up to then I was over 40, I was eating quite a lot of meat. And within about 3 or 4 months, I gave up eating meat because I wasn't being sentimental, but I thought what an awful job it must be to work in an abattoir and kill all these animals, and a dreadful job. So I thought, no, I can't go on eating meat. And I also became very interested in the situation in Tibet and the oppression by the Chinese. And I started trekking in the Himalayas, in Nepal first, and then in Ladakh, which is India. And I got to know some Tibetan monks. I stayed in monasteries. And now I support the Ladakh Eye Care Center. Ladakh is very dry. It's a high-altitude desert, despite the fact that, the Indus runs through it. And they're building a new centre for a lot of people who have eye problems. It's so dry and dusty that I've been doing that for several years. I think also I'm more generous than I used to be. I support lots of good causes, green cause. I'm a member of the Green Party and I'll be voting for them in the next election. And I've made some very, very good friends through going to Buddhist groups. So literally it's changed my life. Is that enough? Is that enough?
What's your perception about Tzu Chi just now when you see it?
I think the social aspect of your work is very, very good. Because, as I said, I have a friend who works at Cornerstone for people who have no secure place to sleep. And I support Shelter, which is an organisation which also does the same sort of thing. So yes, but I'm very much into challenging politicians because they have enormous power, you know. So I won't say any more than that.
My name is Kelvin Ravenscroft. I've been to the session this morning exploring the Tzu Chi approach to Buddhism, and it's been a very thoughtful and very compassionate presentation of the ways in which this expression of Buddhism relates and responds to the various forms of suffering in the world. And it's been interesting to see the ways in which very practical responses, very practical projects are put in action in Manchester and beyond to show and demonstrate this compassion and to put into practice in the real world the Buddha's teaching, the Dharma.
So what is your perception to Tzu Chi when you watch all?
My perception of Tzu Chi is it is new to me. It's a form or a school of Buddhism that I've not heard of before. But in the presentation that's taken place this morning, it's very clearly illustrated that it is a form of Buddhism that is practical, that connects to the real problems of the world. And at the heart of everything it does is the experience and the attitude, the value of compassion.
My name is Ling Dorje. Compassion in action. Sounds very easy. Actually, it's very hard to do. That's probably one of the reasons why I like coming to this, because I can be quite an impatient person, but what patience I do have, I apply with perseverance and not giving up to compassion and action to the benefit of all beings to help them. And this helps me, is kind of like a fuel to the fire. So I'm glad that I know about this. I found out about the conference through a friend, Fortunate Karma. So this small contribution, about compassion and action is wonderful. It helps me apply the compassion in different ways. It alleviates my doubts and benefits my mind. Thank you.
My name is Stephen Sack. I have a disability, and there's times when my mind has been quite shaky, but I've studied a lot of different spiritual paths, and I've been eclectic in my life. At the moment, I'm committing to Tibetan Buddhism to understand that. Sometimes people's pure actions can wipe delusion from the mind, and it's very obvious to me that the analogy I used was you could spend your whole life practicing Zen, but if you walk past a river while someone's drowning and you don't perform right action in the moment, then it's all wasted. It did move me very, very deeply. Your teacher does move me very, very deeply. And that understanding that action itself, like Buddha said, life is suffering, not because it's nihilistic, but all of us end up getting ourselves into situations where we suffer and we want our suffering to be relieved. It's a pragmatic solution to the suffering in the world. But it's also the case that grappling with the suffering in the world and changing the world, but changing it, as it was said today, changing it mindfully, in terms of saying you must both act not out of ego but through altruism, and you must have an internal control. But at the same time, the balance is saying that in acting upon the world, that itself is purifying, that right action is more purifying than anything else in some ways. It did move me very, very deeply indeed, and I will treasure reading this book, because for me, the more you look in different worlds and see exactly the same thing over and over again, the more you say, well, then that is obviously, if your mother tells you something, yeah. But then if everybody says the same thing, you end up saying, well, now I can see in my heart that I know it's true. Thank you very much indeed. Namaste.